Hello Year 3 and welcome to our next lesson all about biographies. So we are going to have a look today at thinking about the tense that we're going to use. Let's have a look. We'll look at the tense, which is the past tense, and we'll also be moving on to a bit of planning so that we can finish up in time for tomorrow. So we're going to be having a think about what the past tense is and why we use it and how we use it. We're going to change some present tense verbs to the past tense, and then you're going to plan your writing. So your I can is I can use the past tense. Quick retrieval to keep our memories fresh. When do we use the past tense? And then I'd like you to write down as many past tense verbs as you can think of, because when we're talking about tenses it's usually the verb. Now what's a verb? It's a doing word, isn't it? An action, a doing word. So we either do things in the past, the present, or the future. When do we use the past? And write down some verbs. Okay, pause the video for me, do that now please. So we use the past tense when things happened in the past. Things that happened yesterday, last year, this morning, or even a few moments ago. Anything that isn't the present. Anything that isn't happening right now but has happened before is the past. And anything that's going to happen next, whether it's in a few minutes, this afternoon, this evening, tomorrow, that's the future. So why do we use the past tense for a biography? Well, it's because we're talking about a person's life from when they were born up to the point that they are now, or up to the end of their life if they've died. So it's mainly looking back at their lives in order, so it will be written therefore in the past. So I'd like you now to look at these 5 short sentences, and I'd like you to change the verbs to the past tense in these sentences. Think about how you change them. Did you add something or do something else? So, he swims in the sea, she jumps over the wall, I walk to the shop, she climbs on the swing, I run to the park. Could you pause again and just write those sentences in the past tense? How did you get on? He swam in the sea, she jumped over the wall, I walked to the shops, she climbed on the swing, I ran to the park. How did you change them? Did we add a suffix sometimes, and what was that suffix? You should know this is quite straightforward. We've done this a lot. The ed suffix often makes it past tense, doesn't it? Look at all those ed suffixes on those middle 3. Sometimes we have to change the word more, don't we? So we started with he swims in the sea, and we changed that to he swam. That's what we call an irregular verb, because we can't just add ed, we have to change the word a little bit. The same with I ran to the park. That was I run to the park. So we can't just add ed. We don't say I runned to the park. We say I ran. So again, we need to change the letters and the spelling of that word a little bit. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a biography of Roald Dahl, the wonderful writer Roald Dahl, and we're going to, you're going to find the verbs that have been written incorrectly in the present tense and change them to the past tense. Now, this is available for you as a PDF on the Google Drive if you want to print it off and change it on paper. You can otherwise just follow and change it, or think about the changes on screen, whatever's best for you. I'll read it through with you quickly. Read along with me if you'd like, and listen out as we go along what's going to change to the past. Now the clue is not every single present tense word has to change to the past. I should say, if you find this tricky, there is a PDF on the Google Drive that has highlighted in red all the words I want you to change. So if you'd like a bit more help, you could have a look at that version, and then you'll know what to change. You've just got to work out how to change it. But for some of you, you might prefer to find the word first and then make the change. Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl is one of the greatest storytellers for children of the 20th century. Early life. Roald Dahl was born on the 30th of September 1916 in Wales to parents who are both from Norway. He is named after Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian who had been the first man to reach the South Pole just 4 years earlier. His father dies when he was 3 years old, and he is raised by his mother. He has a fairly unhappy time at boarding school, which provides some of the inspiration for his later stories. Working life. After leaving school, he works for the Shell Oil Company based in Africa until the outbreak of the Second World War, when he signs up with the Royal Air Force aged 23 years. Unfortunately, he's injured when his plane is shot down and eventually returns home as an invalid. I've just spotted the deliberate mistake there. Did you spot it? Invalid does not have an E on the end. Anyway, let's carry on. He was then sent to Washington, D.C. to work as a journalist where, almost by accident, he begins his writing career. When he was interviewed for an article about his time in the Royal Air Force, he offers to write about his experiences. In 1943, he writes his first children's book, The Gremlins, which was originally meant to be made into an animated film by Walt Disney. The film is not made, and instead, Roald Dahl decides to write adult fiction, not writing another children's story until the 1960s. By this time he was a father himself. He starts making up stories to entertain his own children. Awards and achievements. Roald Dahl writes 21 children's books, including The BFG, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and The Witches, all of which have been made into films. Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory have been made into award-winning musicals. He wins many awards, including the Millennium Children's Book Award and the Blue Peter Book Award for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. His death. Roald Dahl dies on the 23rd of November 1990, aged 74. He is buried in the parish church of St Peter and St Paul in Great Missenden in Buckinghamshire. His legacy. Roald Dahl's books have been read by millions of children, who is loved and being inspired by his stories. Roald Dahl Museum and Story Centre is visited by thousands of people every year. Gosh, that was quite hard to read in the wrong tense. I think it sounded very peculiar. So would you like to go now and have a look and change any verbs that are in the wrong tense into the past tense? Pause and have a go at that for me, please. Right, children, did you find them all, I wonder? Here we are in red. Here are the verbs that you should have changed. I'm going to let you pause again and just see, did you find them all? Many of them is turned to was. That's an auxiliary verb. Was born, is born, was born. Sometimes you add, well, just a D in this case, rather than an ED. ED, ED, ED. Ed. Began, that's irregular, so begins to began. Ed. Changing this one, writes to wrote. Was, decided, started. So a mixture there of adding ed and irregular verbs. And here we've got writes becomes wrote, wins becomes won, dies become died. I've circled this one here. Oh, this was a bit tricky. Children who have loved and been inspired by his stories. I've circled the is here. That one has not been changed to was. The Roald Dahl Museum and Story Centre is visited by thousands of people every year. Why have I not changed that to was? It needs to be in the present, doesn't it? It's because people are still visiting. It's still open and people still visit every year, so it's a present tense verb. Just be careful with that. I think same here. He is buried. You could have put he was buried in the parish church. That was when he was buried, but he's also still buried there, so he is buried in the church. Either would have made sense there, actually. Is or was, but here it had to be is. How did you get on? Hope that was okay for you. Little practice in past tense verbs there. Now, the next thing you need to do today, if you can, is to write your plan. So we've got the sections, which will make up the sections and the subheadings of your biography. The name of your person, the hook or the interesting opening statement, something about their early life, their working life or their influences. So with Mother Teresa we saw influences, didn't we? influenced by God, called by God, or it could just be about their working life. That's what we've seen with Roald Dahl, an explanation of early life tends to be your childhood, working life is adulthood, really. The award and achievements, his or her death, the date, perhaps where they're buried, where they may have died, if they have. If they're still alive, you leave that blank. Legacy, how are they remembered, and include your quote. So I'm just going to show you very briefly how I'm going to change from my notes to my plan, because if, like me, when you were doing your plan, you were just getting really into the subject and the person, you may not have been organising it as I would like you to organise it. So we're going to do a bit of that now. So Florence Nightingale was a nurse. Oh, so my name of my person goes in here. Let's write this here. That's very self-explanatory and straightforward. Let's just make it a bit smaller. Interesting hook. You've got to think, what's the most interesting thing about your person? It's interesting that she was a nurse, but why was she important? Why bother with her as a nurse over anybody else? And I think for me, it's the fact that she changed nursing. She changed the face of nursing. I discovered that her father didn't want her to be a nurse, didn't think she was a very good profession, and so she worked and worked and worked at it, and she changed the face of nursing. She nursed many, many soldiers in these terrible conditions in the Crimean War, and that's why we remember her. So I need to think about how I'm going to write that. Let's get it a bit smaller again so you can see. Florence, I'm going to say significantly changed nursing into a well-respected profession during very difficult during a very difficult time. It's a bit like when we wrote our newspapers, isn't it? When we write our newspaper reports, and we had that hook, that opening statement to get people to read more. So you might think, I want to know more about it. Well, what was this difficult time, and what was the profession? What did she do? So that's just one sentence to get people hooked. Then we're going to go on to early life. And I know, what have I got here? I know when she was born. So I'm going to put that in. Let's just pop that in. Again, it can still be notes. Born in Florence in Italy on the 12th of May 1820, etc. I discovered that she was brought up in England. So she was born in Italy, probably when her family were travelling, and then she was brought up in Derbyshire and Hampshire, and her father was a wealthy landowner. So I'm going to put all that over here and fill that in now. You can do the same. Awards and achievements, what did they get, when did they die, and how they'll be remembered. And so if it's a sportsman, it might be they won a gold medal, it might be that they won the Tour de France in the yellow jersey, it might be that if they're an actress they won an Oscar, or a singer, they won a MOBO award, whatever they've done. If it's an author, it could be a book award, it could be the Nobel Prize, whatever. So put your information into your plan. Again, your plans can be printed off if you want to, otherwise you could just use these headings and write them straight into your book. So pause the video, have a go at that for me now, please. Okay, children, how did you get on? I hope that you've thought about the past tense and you've got all your plan organised so that tomorrow when you're writing it's a relatively straightforward activity. If you've got any gaps, anything you need to go back and fill in, haven't got enough on awards or achievements, now's the time to go back onto the internet and just do a Google search to see if you can find out about their awards, or their legacy. If they haven't died, they may still have a legacy. They may still be doing some really important work that we hope will go on beyond their lives, that you might be able to use in your conclusion. Well done, children, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.